Hello, everyone. Uh, Thank you for joining us this very day, Africa Union at 60. My name is Debo Folorunsho, and I'm the Executive Director for Society for Africans in Diaspora, said Institute. Today, I'm joining you from Houston, where we're located. I'm inside the first Pan African Library in the United States, said Institute Pan African Library. And we've been in existence for the past 10 years. We're here and we're growing. We started celebrating Africa Day since 2013, which was the year that the AU recognized the diaspora as the sixth region of the continent. We recognize that Africa in the diaspora are force for good. We Africans want to have a global sense of belonging. The future is not what it used to be. The future is changing and a lot of destruction is taking place. In 1990, about 150 people live, 150 million people live outside of the country where they were born. In today, about 240 million people live outside of the country where they were born. If these people are to form a country, they will be the fifth largest country in the whole world. About 80 million Africans is living outside the country where they are born. And we know that these people are not lost actors, but they are game changers and they are national treasure and assets to the continent of Africa. The information age is over. The measurement of power in this very age that we live in is connectedness. We need to be connected. We need to be a global citizen. We need to think beyond our geographical location and our boundary. Everything is available at the point of a click, but we don't live in that space anymore because it's not a technological world that we now live in. We need to use that connectiveness to connect to one another. Now it's more like your network determine your sources, determine your progress, and we should not live in isolation. Uh, McKinsey recently put a report out that 100 million people between now and 2030 will change jobs. 100 million people between now, which is 2023 to 2030, will change job and will not live in the country where they are born. So, in regards to the theme of this U.S. Africa Summit, Beyond the Border, it is now more important about what we do. It is important about what we do and where it is more important about what we do than where we live. So it's not about what we do, it's about what we do than where we live. I'm sorry. In the olden days, your job dictates your identity. And where you're born dictates your identity. If you're born in Lagos, you're a Lagosian. If you're born in South Africa, you're South Africans. If you're born in Ghana, you're Ghanaian. But nowadays, geographical location or country cannot define us anymore. We're a global player, we're a global citizen, and we can see that in some of the speakers that we're bringing in today. Uh, Adebola William will be joining us from Lagos. Uh, uh, Yetunde Odugbeson will be joining us from Paris. Niyo Jolapo will be joining us from Somalia, and other speakers around the world will be joining us. That means we're all connected in our own space as a global citizen. Last week, the AU ambassador was in Houston, and I asked her three questions. The question is this: what has helped China become this massive manufacturing country that everybody is looking to manufacture in China? And the second question was, what has helped India become a global tech hub for people looking into the tech space? And what has helped India become the global a startup nation. In our own case, as Africans and people of African descent, the question is, what will help Africa to become this peaceful and prosperous continent, that Africa that we want to see? That is, we have to have few things in place: the flow of people, the flow of money, and the flow of knowledge. And that is what we're advocating for in this very discussion, which is beyond our borders. Beyond our borders. Uh, Gone are the days whereby when you live outside of the continent, you leave the continent, you leave Lagos, you leave Soweto, you leave Kigali, they see you that you are gone. You're gone forever. You're absent. Absent means exile. You don't need to be connected because you're gone. But these very day that we live in, you can be absent and you can still be connected to your homeland, and you can think as a global citizen and well engaged in your home country and also in your host country. So that is what we want for our people. That's what we want for the people of African descent, and leave this global mindset that we are all a global citizen and we're all global player, and we should all share in the prosperity of the land that we live in, and also share in the prosperity of our host country. So I think my job is done to kind of set the tone for this U.S. Africa Diaspora Summit. But for, for now, before I pass the conversation to Nia Black, who is going to moderate the panel and bring people in, I just want to say Happy Africa Day. And I want to say we want to see an Africans wherever they live to be connected in tech space, in agriculture, in everywhere they see there's opportunity, because our boundary will not limit us. And we should all think as a global leader. Thank you, thank you, thank you. To all our speakers from today till Saturday, we say thank you for answering the call to serve, and thank you for being with us today. I pass it on to Nia to get us rolling. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Steppa, for that introduction. Hello, everyone, and welcome again to the U.S. Africa Diaspora Summit, Beyond Our Borders, curated by said institute. My name is Nia Black Amuzi. I'm a media personality based here in Houston, Texas, and I'm so honored to be your moderator for today's event. As Deborah said, today we celebrate Africa Day, and we also celebrate the African Union turning 60. As we all know, the African Union created a set of initiatives called Agenda 2063, which captures Africa's aspiration for the future and also identifies key programs that will boost Africa's economy and lead to the transformation of the continent. Now, today's event, titled Beyond Our Borders: Migration, Mobility, and Good Governance, in connection with Agenda 2063, has been put together to foster discussions and conversations that brings the African diaspora to the center stage and also empowers us to take up spaces, rooms, and tables where issues related to the African continent is being discussed. As Deborah always say, this summit is about our shared future. And so we hope that everyone watching, all of the speakers, everyone leaves here with the knowledge and inspiration needed to create the Africa we want. Now, here's the breakdown of today's event. We have an amazing lineup of speakers featuring 10 global leaders. Each speaker will speak for about 3 to 5 minutes. The topics that will be explored will focus on creativity, entrepreneurship, and innovation, bridges to the diaspora, removing our trade barriers, and the rise of African music, just to name a few. We definitely want to hear from the audience and have an interactive session. So, questions will be asked at the end after our last speaker has finished his presentation. We encourage you to please post your questions in the chat. So, if you're watching on Facebook, post it in the chat. If you're watching on YouTube, Post it in the chat as well. And at the end, I will read the questions for the appropriate speaker to respond. Now, with that being said, I want to give a warm welcome to our panelists. Thank you all for taking the time to be here with us today. Your act of service will never, never go unnoticed. So at this time, please allow me to introduce our first speaker. Let me just confirm. Do we have Adebola Lagos with us? Adebola Williams, is he on? Do we have him on with us before I introduce him as the first speaker?
Can you hear me?
Perfect, perfect, perfect. All right, so let's go ahead and start with that. So our first speaker is the one and only Adebola Williams, popularly known as Debola Lagos. Adebola Williams is a chairman of AW Network and co-founder of RED for Africa, the continent's largest portfolio of youth-focused media brands, including Red Media Africa, Statecraft Inc., The Future Awards Africa, and WhyNiger.com. Adebola Williams successfully put 3 presidential candidates into power through the influence of social media and good public relations. Williams values Africa's potential and uses his platform to amplify positive stories out of the continent. Now, this is just a preview of his bio. I do recommend everyone to connect with him all across social media. He's very active. Today, Debola will be presenting on the Africa we want, beyond our borders, good governance in Africa. Debola, I sincerely apologize. I am working with multiple screen. I was looking here, looking there. Forgive me, virtual never goes smoothly. I'm like, is he here? But I'm looking somewhere else. We do appreciate you being here with us. The floor is yours.
Great. So can you hear me clearly?
Perfect, perfect.
Excellent, excellent. Good evening and happy Africa Day. I am indeed pleased to join you tonight from Lagos, and good afternoon, good morning from wherever you are in the world. When we celebrate Africa Day on the continent, we do so fully aware that our celebration is not complete if it doesn't include our siblings and extended family in the diaspora. Our extended family includes first and second generation of African immigrants who have naturalized in the US, Europe, Australia, Asia, and our much more distant cousins, African Americans, Afro-Latin siblings from Central and South America and the Caribbean. We know our siblings and relatives because our collective stories are intertwined over centuries, splintered by migration, slavery, commerce, culture, and diverse, yet united by a 3-strand cord: DNA, heritage, and culture. These stories are what we seek to celebrate on Africa Day. But not just to celebrate them, but to unite them, strengthening our shared history and forging stronger, united front as we determine our future. The future of the continent and of the people of Black and African descent has never been as perilous as it is now. All across Africa, news break of corruption, violence, despotic leaders, and breakdown of democratic societies in the developed world. We see fascism on the rise, as is racism and other forms of bigotry, and disproportionately, they continue to affect people of Black and African descent. It is easy in all of this chaos to focus on the present, to seek self-preservation over our shared future. But I can speak from experience that the rewards of a united, collaborative effort to secure our future instead of prioritizing our present comfort cannot be overemphasized. The future we see for ourselves as Black starts with the stories we tell about ourselves. There is much to be concerned about, but we cannot hyper-focus on the negative and forget to recognize and nurture the positive growth we have seen on the continent and from Black people of African descent across the globe. As the adage says, we must not denigrate our father's house because it only brings insult. onto our mother, our siblings, and the entire clan. We must tell stories that empower us as a people, that amplifies our greatness, and also those that inspire us to be hopeful, to focus on things we have going for us, to draw energy to fix things that are not. One of the stories we must amplify is the growing kinship between Africans in the diaspora and Black people of African descent. Suddenly, the motherland has become the next big thing. Ghana has become a mecca or sort for those who want to reconnect with the continent. And African countries are transitioning away the idea that the continent is simply a tourist location to be enjoyed in short bursts, and now inviting you to visit and experience the continent as locals, immersed in the continent's historic heritage, its vibrant contemporary culture, returning the identity that has over the years been systematically erased, helping the diaspora to find its root again and flourish for the benefit of the continent. Sure, there is a lot of immigration, as many Africans seek to better their fortunes in the West, but we are not opportunists. Wherever Africans go, we show our excellence and prove our worth. From the Biden's administration to the King's Palace, Silicon Valley to lab in China, Africans are solving problems, adding value to the world. If countries shut their borders today on us, we will still do well. We will thrive. We are the owners of cobalt that powers the mobile industry, cocoa that powers the chocolate industry, gold, platinum, arable land, leather, art, and music. We are blessed with wealth. It is not just potential. This is real royalty. And I look forward to a future where our children go to school abroad because they want to experience diversity of culture and expand their worldview, but return home to advance our courses using the knowledge and the exposure they have received like the Chinese do. An African where our knowledge and expertise is respected and sought after, as it was in the 60s and 70s, where people came in droves to University of Ibadan and Ife, amongst others, where tourism is not the only reason visitors from other countries come to the continent. And exotic is no longer the term used to describe our people and cultures. You know, it is laughable that the UK, a country that is currently experiencing a shortage of labor in many sectors of its economy, from healthcare to even airport staff, will scapegoat the very immigrants who are willing and capable to fill these roles for them. This shortage, of course, the direct consequence of Brexit and other exclusionary policies which they sought to compensate by relaxing their formerly strict immigration rules. 43 billion pounds has been injected into the British economy from international students. This money is a small representation of the potential the continent holds, one that can be tapped when knowledge and innovation becomes one of our exports. Nigerian Americans are the most educated demographic in America. Nigerian British students routinely earn top honors and are graduates as valedictorians at their universities. We have talent. We just need the structure to leverage it. Governments that truly love and care for its citizens and introduces policies that truly better the lives of the people. Structure that can only come when the continent and its diaspora combine their efforts towards a shared goal. And as I said at the Wash Gala a couple of years ago, you in the diaspora are water to Africa. And you must send your pipeline back home to wet the soil, to aid it to soften, so that seeds can grow. And when you come back home, you will not be starting from scratch, because one day you must come home. Africa needs its people, its talent, its best. The countries where you all live in were once desolate. There were no malls, there were no cars. All the fancy things you see were built by the hands. Some of your ancestors, we have to acknowledge that. But if we have to do it again, we're resilient and strong and powerful enough, we can rebuild it, because the resources is come from the root. We are the source of the world, and therefore can always regenerate ourselves. We can build an Africa that is not a victim of knee-jerk international policies, where one day we are courted to come and salvage the ruins of the poor Brexit policy, and the next we're punished for responding enthusiastically to their call. My people say, we must also fix our homes so that we don't have to deal with these such situations and embarrassments no more. And Africa united is unstoppable. African descent, African original, Black African, whatever categorization, united, we will change the game for the future of the continent. Unity in purpose and vision has given the West influence to shape global politics, trade, and culture. We can replace this. Less competition over jollof and more collaboration with our friends and neighbors on the continent. Finally, remember, you carry the burden and the blessings of your people every time you go anywhere with this skin color. Be your best self everywhere you go, that you may create passage for those behind you. You are a moving billboard for your race, color, and generations depend on you to get into rooms and stop shrinking yourself too. Let the words of our dear mother, Maya Angelou, always ring down your memory. You have a dream? Go for it. Your bold and crazy idea? Run with it. Every day you strive and achieve, you give another African child permission to become. This is our Africa of hopes, dreams, and boundless possibilities. And the key to turn it around lies in your hands in the diaspora and mine on the continent. Welcome to Africa. Happy Africa Day. Thank you.
Debola Williams, thank you so much. That was beyond powerful. Very, very powerful. Let me ask you this. How do you prefer we call you? Debola Lagos or Debola Williams? I need to know.
Debola Williams. Debola Lagos is my alliance. But any works. But when it's Debola, it's full. It's Adebola. I like you to say my name. It's a prayer, my root, my identity. And it's important that it's fully pronounced. So every time you call it, it's a prayer upon me.
Thank you so much. You know, there were so many takeaways from your keynote. And I think for me, what really stood out was when you said, if the whole world cuts Africa, we will still survive and make it our own. So very, very powerful. I know our audience is just soaking up everything you've said. We truly appreciate you. All right. At this time, we're going to move forward with the next speaker. Our next speaker is Dr. Yetunde Odugbenson Amide. She is a professor of global affairs and politics and the director of the Office of Community and Civic Engagement at the State University of New York, Farmingdale State College, FSC. At FSC, she is responsible for overseeing institutional-wide initiatives that foster civic and community engagement. As a faculty member in the History, Politics, and Geography department, Dr. Yetunde teaches courses on comparative politics, women in comparative political development, imperialism, global politics, African politics, and American foreign policy. She is a para-academic who has extensive practitioner and academic-based experience in global affairs and foreign policy. She's also a four-time author with books written on balance and leadership. Today, Dr. Yetunde will be talking on bridges to the diaspora.
Hi, my name is Dr. Yetunde Omede, Professor of Global Affairs and Political Science at the State University of New York, Farmingdale State College. It's an honor to be serving as one of the keynote speakers today for the U.S. Africa Diaspora Summit. Congratulations to Debo and the SAID Institute for putting such a wonderful event together with wonderful panelists and keynote speakers who will be speaking about many of the things that we see ongoing in the continent. So we fast forward to 10 years now, and where is Africa? You know, what has happened in Africa in the last 10 years? And I think we've seen some tremendous growth. We've seen tremendous growth, not only in innovation, not only in the sciences, in technology, especially coming out of many youth populations across the continent. We've also seen in the diaspora taking more of a leadership, I think, charge and responsibility in ensuring that we write the narrative of Africa and dispelling any of the myths and the stereotypes and maybe discrimination that people may have leveled against the continent as a whole. We in the diaspora have kind of used our own platforms to rewrite the story of Africa, to be the brand architects and the image architects of the continent. In addition to that, we see a lot of strides in the healthcare sector. We see a lot of development from civil society and also non-governmental organizations who are helping many African countries in areas where they need to develop more critical care infrastructure for healthcare. The only thing that, if we look at the last 10 years and we look at the area of politics and we look at the area of governance, yes, African countries are trying to ensure that they instill the democratic values and trying to ensure that they herald their society into a new future. But we still see a lag in the role that young people play in the political systems in African countries. Yes, they may voice their concerns. Yes, they may protest. Yes, they may use technology to, expose some of the things that are going on. But at the same time, we want to also see the role of elected officials in African countries. Many of the countries have put together laws that allow a certain age to run for office, lower than what we have seen in the past, but yet we are still to fill those positions with young people. So we really want to make sure that good governance and protecting the tenets of democracy is something that is invited in the new generation, in the millennials, in the Gen Zs, and the generations that are coming forward. So that's extremely important. And all of the things that we're talking about today, all of the transformations and the state of innovation that the continent is going through as a whole cannot be done if we don't herald the generation, if we don't move them along, if we don't instill in them the importance of many of these value systems. So my hope is that in the next 10 years, we see a new generation of leaders who are our foreign policy officers, who are our elected officials, who work to reform government inside and out to ensure that we stay as competitive in the world, that we protect a lot of the resources that we have, but most importantly, that we put ourselves in a position that is gives us the upper hand when it comes to bilateral relations with other countries around the world. So this is Africa, and although my speech may be short, and I'm happy to record it, and I'm happy that people will be able to listen and also dialogue on this very important topic, but my hope is that as we continue these important conversations, we find critical solutions to ensuring that the young people, Nigeria has the highest youth bulge in the world, with 70% of its population under the age of 30, that they have a say, that they're in the political systems, and that they are our future leaders of our countries across the board. Thank you so much for having me for this conference, and I wish all of you the best.
Thank you so much, Dr. Yetunde. Another powerful keynote today. So many takeaways as well. I think what really stood out for me was when she said, definitely we want to see in the next 10 years a new wave of leaders and a new generation taking over for sure. I do have to add that Dr. Yetunde could not be with us live today. However, she's in Paris, could not, the flight, she wasn't able to make it. But we're so thankful for her tenacity and her ability to record this despite what's going on behind the scene and to join us in a different way today. So at this time, I will move on to our next speaker. Give me some time to introduce our next speaker. Our next speaker is Nsiki Nkize. Nsiki Nkize is the founder of Ment Her, also the founding editor of Ment Her magazine, and the self-published author of My Hall of Mentors. She's a certified 5-lens practitioner and resilient up facilitator with a master's in social innovation. She's an avid international speaker, facilitator, and MC. Nsiki gave a keynote, masterclass, and short course as part of HyperCon 2022. She spoke at TEDx Cumbernauld Women Scotland in 2019 and was featured as the youngest speaker at the International Speakers Summit in 2019 and the Epic Entrepreneur Conference in 2020. Today, Nsiki is going to be speaking on creative economy. Nsiki, thank you so much for joining us. Do we have you there with us?
The floor
yes,
is I am here. Thank you so much. It's an evening here in South Africa, so good evening from me, but hello to everybody, regardless of the time zone that you're joining us from. In my language, isiZulu, we will say Sanbonani, which means I see you. So to all of you joining us on this Africa Day, I see you. And yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity, and thank you so much to the team at SAID for the opportunity to join. So in the time that I've been given, I want to share with you really practically around the creative economy and how we come together and create those bridges for connection to help us grow the creative economy, but to also sustain opportunities and work opportunities within that space. I'd like to open up by a quote that I think a lot of us have heard. It's an African proverb that says that until the lion learns to write, the story of success will always be told by the victor. And I think we've heard that in many different ways, right? But it's to go, Africa is a place that is rich in so many different ways, including culture and including our stories. I'm somebody who enjoys watching history documentaries. I enjoy watching a good documentary of nearly about anything, food, culture, whatever in any country. And going, how much of that have we explored? How much of that have we unearthed in Africa? I also look at things like history and archaeology and politics and religion and going, the genesis and the origin of all of those things are in Africa. So who is telling those stories? Starting out just with some facts is Adewale rightly said this, is that we have talent as a continent, right? So Nollywood as an industry that produces fantastic movies makes about 3.2 billion naira annually. In South Africa, our movie industry is about 325 million rand annually, and of the entire Netflix subscribing population, 55% of that audience is in South Africa. Um, Across the continent, our gig economy is growing by 20% a year. And we know that this is, a group of people that are considered to be most high risk. However, these are people who are entrepreneurial. These are people with talent. These are people who are creative, who are able to piece things together and make things happen. We also know that across the continent, 460 million people live in extreme poverty. And that apart from that, I think our previous speaker mentioned this as well, is that we have a growing youth population. If you're looking for youth, there's a thriving population. Looking at Africa, 50% of our population is considered youth. And of that 50%, half of those individuals are under the age of 16. So really, as the African diaspora, when we think about the future of our continent, we're going, how are we creating jobs and opportunities for these individuals? And more importantly, as somebody who's watching under 35, how are you showing up and taking charge and creating the future that you want for yourself? So I think the facts are abundant, and a lot of us know about those facts and what they entail. So I want to switch a little bit and discuss opportunities, right? So as an entrepreneur, I work a lot with female entrepreneurs across the continent. I also work a lot with entrepreneurs who are in the social impact space. And this is a big thing because we have a lot of social issues. They're not unique to Africa, but they might exist on higher levels. And people who are in spaces where they're creating businesses around addressing those also have to learn how to be sustainable in those industries. So when we look at the population that makes up the African diaspora, we have 170 million people living outside the continent, right? And these are creatives. These are people who form part of civil society, people who can make decisions, people who can influence policy, people who are also customers, right? They can go, we demand this kind of content. I think back to when I was a child, and the only movies I ever saw that came out from Nollywood, I had to wait for a guy at the traffic light with a CD selling them, with a DVD selling them, right? And so when we look at how we consume as a global population in Africa and those in the diaspora, and in the rest of the world that's looking at Africa with big eyes, who's owning streaming platforms? Who's owning our music? Who is sharing and producing this with the world, right? We have great rich history. We have consumers here, right? Africans know what our great stories are, and we have incredible angles on how to tell those stories. And then in addition to that, there is going, we also have to own that content, right? So we can't just be giving away our stories without any revenue at the end of that. So how do we create a closed loop that allows us to take the talent that is already here, develop it, bring in the infrastructure and support. And that's not to say that the infrastructure isn't already here, right? Tons of movies get shot in different parts of Africa. I know in South Africa, Cape Town has a season that's constantly booked out, and COVID hit us really hard because that industry wasn't able to operate. So those opportunities do exist. At the moment, 22%, about 22% of the African population are entrepreneurial. So people who are of working age are entrepreneurs. And I think Nigeria has the highest entrepreneurial population. So if we combine all of those things, what does innovation and impact look like for the creative space? I'd like to invite you all to go check out a company called Snake Nation. They are based in South Africa, and they've created a platform that is built on blockchain technology, and it allows creatives to go onto the platform to mint what they create, and they have a specific coin that they use. I think it's called Snake Coin that's used on their platform, and they're creating this exchange platform where creatives can go onto a platform, create their content, have a currency that allows them to value their content and make earnings from that, and then trade amongst each other on that particular platform, but then also take that out to campuses and universities and engage with people on that level and go, what are students consuming? What are students creating on campus? Which students here are into fashion? Who does this? And then start building out that community. So if we're thinking about how do we utilize the talent we already have to galvanize support for the creative sector, we have to look at we enjoy talent, we enjoy entertainment, and we produce it. So, how do we then become owners of that? And in becoming owners of that, we're really answering the question of how do we then create employment opportunities, especially looking at those high youth population that does exist, that is unemployed, or that can't find gainful employment because of various socioeconomic and political challenges across the various countries in our continent. And then to go, of our family and friends in the diaspora, how do we leverage technology? How do we get people who are thought leaders and who sit in leadership positions at big tech corporations to come in, and instead of going, hey, there's a corporate that was flying around balloons collecting data at some point. Um, yeah, sure, you want our data, but what are you doing in return, right? So, how do we get big tech to come in and create different hubs that allow creatives to come in and play? So, for us at Mentor, we are in the process of setting up creative spaces, so mentor hubs, particularly in township and rural spaces, which are normally far removed from where entrepreneurship happens and where the ecosystem has resources available. And in these creative co-working maker spaces, we're going, here's a podcasting studio, here's a recording studio, come shoot your videos, come host your meetings, come get online and access the internet, come attend all of these summits, because data is a challenge for a lot of people, and going, okay, now that you're in the space, who can we get to meet you halfway, to support what you are creating, to buy what you are creating, to create a platform that allows you to take what you are creating to the world. And really, for me, what I'd love to see is a Netflix that is South African content, that is our talent, that is our bright mind. And we see this all the time, right? I'm still waiting for my December appointment to make it out to dirty December. It didn't happen for me last year. I'm hoping this year it will happen. But we see people gravitating to things like Afro Nation, right? And there's no reason why the best music festivals that happen in the world shouldn't happen in our continent and across our continent when the world is consuming our music. There's no reason why some of the world's best movie festivals shouldn't happen on our continent when people are retelling our stories and when people um, admire our talent, our actors and actresses. So really bringing that out. And a quote that I really like by Maya Angelou, she says that I show up as one, but I stand as 1,000. For those of us showing up in different spaces, how do we deliberately show up in a way that allows us to innovate, looking at what we already have, and allows us to own the ecosystem of every plug point that goes into the creative space and gig economy. And by owning that, allows us to create employment opportunities and then drive impact so that everyone is participating in the continent, but that those outside are also then not just looking to us and going, how do we get in on the action, but supports Africans to be the change makers and the owners of making that action take place. Thank you so much for this opportunity, Nia. I'd like to hand it over to you.
Thank you so much, Nsiki. We truly appreciate you. Thank you for touching on the creative space. As we know, the world is shifting too much that too much, and now more so than ever into that space. And thank you for highlighting it. I definitely want to see us as Africans taking more ownership of our stories, right? And telling our stories in the best possible way. I do want to ask you a question. So you are live in South Africa. Thank you for joining us. What time is it in South Africa right now?
So it is 20 to 10 at night, and I'm currently load shed, so I've got a power outage at the moment. But I really wanted to be part of this opportunity and this conversation because it's such an important conversation for us to have.
1000%. And I just want to, reiterate here that this conversation is across the diaspora, not just in the US. We have Ziki from South Africa, Adebola Williams in Nigeria. Thank you so much, Ziki. We truly appreciate you. So now we are going to transition to our next speaker. But before we do, I do want to say for those of you watching, if you have any questions so far, if you're on Facebook, on YouTube, wherever it is, please post your questions in the chat. And at the end of the final presentation, I will read out the question so the appropriate speaker can respond to that question. All right? Perfect. And secondly, I am live at said library. I know you all can see the books behind me. I did want to mention that earlier. And so we are just utilizing this amazing space created by said. All right. So our next speaker is Busi Masiko Andan. Busi is a global strategist and CEO of Point Global. She's an award winning global strategist, I should say, entrepreneur and board trustee who has held positions on Wall Street as Smith Barney, Oppenheimer and Co., and Citibank. She's a serial entrepreneur who is widely recognized for her impact leadership. For those who don't know, Busi is extremely influential and also active on social media. As a global strategist and CEO of Point Global, Busi has been instrumental in successfully scaling and growing companies and organizations. She is executive director of the Africa Future Summit, which brings together investors and leaders in technology, entrepreneurship, and politics to address the challenges that affect Africa's future. She's also the first Black woman trustee of Berkeley College. Today, Busi will be talking about the Africa we want. Busi, the floor is yours. Take it away. Do we have Busi with us? Perfect. You're mute. Do you want to unmute yourself?
Thank you, Nia. How are you?
I am well. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. I'm out in LA for AFCON, and so exciting. I was just hearing what Sister Nsiki was saying. She's in South Africa, which is 10 p.m., and for us, it's like 11 a.m. I'm used to being on Eastern Standard Time in New York, and it's interesting being on the West Coast at this moment. But such an honor. I am always, it's always a pleasure to see you. And said, I mean, if you have not visited said library, you should. I had a lovely time when I was in Houston at said, and it's amazing, And that brings us to the Africa we want. Yeah, so when you think about Africa, what's the narrative? We've had different narratives. We've had historical. I mean, I was a history student during my A levels, and having had a fortunate opportunity to have studied at so I've had the opportunity to have studied both the Eurocentric version as well as the Afrocentric version. And we are fortunate that we have that opportunity to see that. And what I like right now with technology has brought us the opportunity to see Africa in a light that we want to see it, in terms of opportunities for Africa. Yes, I am a diaspora leader. I'm proud to have said that I've spent about since 2002, I've been actively involved in the Africa diaspora. And we create the Africa we want, until we begin to tell our stories. That is, there's a Ghanaian proverb, until the lion begins to tell its stories, the hunter will be glorified. And in that regard, it's important we set the precedent about what the stories we want to be, you know? And for me, this is a call for action because, yes, you have made the introduction of who I am and that kind of thing. I have been intentionally and deliberately active in bringing people alongside me as I grow. Fortunately, I've seen that with the generation ahead of me from my family on both my father's side and my mother's side doing that. We are not each other's competition because sometimes I find we are so self focused on building our own systems and not an ecosystem. It's important we build an ecosystem because no man is an island. After Boosie, there's a generation behind. After person Z, there's a generation behind. But if you're just self serving and just about building your system, if your system collapses, you cannot leave a legacy. Legacies are created by building ecosystems. And it's because of the people before us who have not been selfish that certain opportunities exist. Currently, when I do stuff, I work with a team, whether in Ghana, whether in Uganda, and push talent in those countries. Some people have asked me, what exactly do you do? You know what I do. I'm a strategist. And by being a strategist, let me make one thing clear. A strategist, in my perspective, is not someone who's opportunistic, but someone who sees opportunities and wants to bring opportunities to amplify on the greatness of Africa and not only focus on our weaknesses. Yes, we have weaknesses, but every society has weaknesses. Talk about the case of South Africa. I'm half Ugandan, half South African. When people would focus on xenophobia and what's not happening, working well in South Africa, guess what? What's also working in South Africa? How about you also focus on what's working? How about you focus on the collaborations between South Africa and Nigeria, not focusing on the what you think are the differences? That's a distraction. When you think about Afrobeats, who are the first consumers of Afrobeats? South Africans. Focus on our similarities, our opportunities, not on tearing each other down. We cannot afford to tear one another down. And I say this because you've had situations where you reach out to someone reaches out to you, or you reach out to somebody. You don't have the decency to acknowledge the person who has reached out to you, yet you're claiming you're building Africa. You're building Africa. But you are shutting down people who want to build with you because we are building blocks. We need each other to build. So if you're operating in silos, eventually your silo will collapse. Yes, you might be at the top, but guess what? You can face extinction. But if you build intentionally and deliberately with the right motive, that is building Africa we want, you will, see said and say, okay, what's the said need for me to help amplify other Africans? If said is strong, other Africans will be stronger. If another organization, African, is strong, and I go there, we will build other Africans. And if said an African, or say MyPad, or say the African Diaspora Network, or say other organizations communicate, we will build us the Africa we want. We're not each other's competition, and we should stop it. Because why I say this, because I see what people don't realize. I'm very observant, and I'm not Busi Matsiko, and then by accident. Yes, I'm a board trustee of an institution which is over 90 years old. It's not by accident that I'm in that position. I'm involved in the UN. It's not by accident I'm involved in that at that level. I'm called by, say, the African Union. It's not by accident that I'm in that room, or even mainstream organizations. It's not by accident I'm called into those rooms. You know what? We need a seat at the table. If we don't have a seat at the table, policies will happen without us. Once I was in a very influential room, and someone came and just started talking about this was a room of the investors. Someone started talking about saying they're from Africa and talking negative about Africa. A colleague of mine stood up and said, wait a minute, this is not a place for you to start talking about our weaknesses to investors who are trying to find out about Africa. There's a place for that, rather than you just self-serving and trying to act like you know it all and that kind of thing and tearing down your country. You should be promoting your country, encouraging them as we work through situations. And that's what happens here. America is not perfect. The West is not perfect. But do you see them destroying their content, talking bad? For every negative conversation, there's a positive conversation. So for me, I will say, I'm glad I'm part of platforms that amplify and create the Africa we want. Pond Global is an advisory a management consulting firm. It's an advisory which advises organizations on how to engage, how to scale, and everything like that. At the same time, I am called upon to speak on different platforms about the Africa we want. Yes, I am. And I'm proud to say, you know what? That is how I built. I built one of the first fashion technology firms, which was twice acquired. I've built 2 successful cosmetics surgery practices that exist in New York. And there's a reason as to why I'm using myself in this particular context to see the Africa I want. What Africans want is partnerships. Look at them as partners on the ground. Don't go in trying to show them how to do things. This is dictating to them. No. How do we build together? How do I learn from someone on the ground? Sometimes some people on the ground know more than you know. Let's go in with an open mind to listen and create collaborations and opportunities while they're also creating opportunities. Sometimes people on the continent will create opportunities for you, not necessarily you creating the opportunities for them. That attitude of the savior complex of thinking you're going to always rescue people or people want something from you, that is a scarcity mindset. An abundance mindset calls for, oh my God, there's enough resources. We can create more with what we have and amplify and build blocks. If we have a strong foundation, a stronger tower will come up. If we have a weak foundation, it will go tall, but it will one day collapse. We need to create that Africa which is a bridge, which works with its diaspora to strengthen from strength to strength. With the beauty of Africa is that we have a young population. There are about 1.4 billion Africans. Not only that, we have a vibrant diaspora, about 120 million. And then we also, we are very creative. We are hopeful even through what we have gone through. But we can't tear one another up, them against us. And also we can work together with allies who want to build with us. I'm talking even like with the AFCFTA. There's an opportunity with the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement, but that has to be properly implemented. We cannot just say it's only policy people. That is just say the organizations such as the UN, you also need to use your consumer banks, like instead of you have the DFIs like your Afrexim banks, but you also have your commercial banks like your ABSA banks, your standard banks, Stanbic banks. Those, we need to have everyone at the table. People, not only lawyers, but also career bankers, also thought leaders together. And sometimes people just, you see people just operating in silos. Oh, I just want to keep my place by myself and not bring others along. Trust me, what good is it for you to be in a place when you're the only one and the last one who will be there? And soon you'll be forgotten. The difference between leaders and leaders. Leaders just think about me, let me be seen. A leader thinks about the entire holistic horizon and will think about making more with what opportunities they have for themselves and others around them and build a solid ecosystem. And that's legacies are created. And the Africa we want is one where everything is holistically brought together with its diaspora and the continent, and encouraging the Afro diasporans to invest in Africa. While we're dealing, yes, we have a governance situation of bad governments, but we can, while we're figuring that out, we can concurrently build ourselves as the business leaders. Thank you so much for that. Thank you, Nir. And if we want to go fast, go alone. If we want to go far, go together. Thank you.
Lucy, so powerful, so much fire. And I love the emphasis on how we need to work together, right? We should focus on the opportunities and stop pulling each other down as Africans across the diaspora. Thank you so much, Lucy. Such a fiery and powerful keynote.
Thank you so much. And always a pleasure, Nia, and all the best. And I can't wait to hear the other conversations taking place from the great leaders that our continent and the diaspora has to offer.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Lucy. All right, we're going to move forward with our next speaker. We are doing good on time. We're slowly going to wrap up. So our next speaker is Niyi Ojualakpe. He's the country representative of UNFPA in Somalia. Prior to assuming the leadership of the Somalia country office, he served in the same capacity in Ghana between 2017 and 2022, with a rich career experience in the management, technical, and programming of international development and humanitarian work. Prior to taking on the assignment in Ghana, he served for 7 years at the headquarters of UNFPA New York as the chief of staff, as well as a special assistant to the executive director. Now, just like Busi, Niyi was also here at said institute in Houston last month. He came to visit us all the way from Somalia, which we're very thankful for. So today, Niyi will be talking about bridges to the diaspora.
Thank you very much, Nia. Thanks for having me. I'm very grateful for this privilege and opportunity, because anytime I have a reason to talk about Africa, I take it as an honor. Absolutely. And I just want to speak briefly. I'll try my best to keep to time. And I'm going to be using the example of Somalia. I happen to be right now in Somalia, where I work with the United Nations Population Fund as country representative. So this Somali experience and what we see in Somalia is something that the entire African continent needs to take a lesson from. And I'm going to be looking at what I'm talking about, because the connection between the Somali diaspora community and their own country is very fascinating. And their role in the country's reconstruction has been talked about a lot. In a sense, it signifies the importance of migration as a human experience, because those who exit their country at one time or another can use the migration experience to develop the capacity to give back to their community back home. It is one thing that every one of us should shift our mindset to acknowledge. It is also, when people migrate, it also indicates the remarkable commitment of them, and in this case, the Somali community, the Somali people, both outside and within the country. It signifies their remarkable commitment to create a better future. And this is how I want everybody to look at this. In 2019 alone, the Somali diaspora was reported to have sent back an estimated $2 billion in remittances back home. And if you look at this amount, is actually, is larger than the international aid and foreign direct investment that the country received from development partners. And thousands of Somali families depend on these remittances, that with their brothers, their sisters, their cousins, which they send back home. They depend on these remittances for food, for healthcare, for education, for necessities of life, because Somalia is going through a lot. And that's why, talking about the diaspora, when you talk about the diaspora and what the diaspora has to offer the people, it's a very, very important topic. But it is still, despite that, it is essential to not to limit the narrative of the diaspora community to just remittances alone. Without recognizing it, such reports tend to present a picture of migrants as people who journey abroad just to extract from their new society. But I have a new paradigm for us to look at. Because far from this, the success of the Somali diaspora community and why it can contribute so much to home is the ability to be productive members of the society that they find themselves. That is the society that they emigrate to. They contribute to those society. They are very productive in those society. So it is not by chance that we are seeing a rise in political victories of the Somali diaspora in the West, in Western countries. In 2022, we had, it was reported that about 14 Somali Americans won legislative seats across the United States. Some of them arrived as refugees. They embraced the hospitality of their new society and they contributed significantly to their new society. Many others have been elected to city councils, school boards, and what have you, and even the boards of parks and recreation and what have you in their respective cities. And it is not just in the United States. In Finland, in Sweden, and the other Nordic countries, and even in the UK, members of the Somali diaspora have also seen themselves. They have driven themselves to the point whereby they are elected as members of parliament in those countries. And these successes confirm two crucial things which I want to put on the table for every one of us. If you don't hear anything today, please note this thing. Number one is the fact that it shows how closely knit the Somali diaspora community can be. And also, it also goes for any other diaspora community. And secondly, it's also a demonstration of the capacity of the Somali diaspora community to improve their immediate society. So they are closely knit, but wherever they are, they contribute to that society. We need to take that home. The question now arises is, number one, how can this capacity be optimized? How can it be harnessed for the benefit of their home country? And that's why I'm talking about this topic. The second issue that I also want to put on the table is that how can deeper connections be developed so that we can be able to maximize the economic function of the diaspora community and their experience and their international network? Those are things that should bother our mind. What can the diaspora community contribute back home? For us in the United Nations system, and I'll let you know that migration not only serves the function of safety for displaced people, or it also serves as an opportunity for regular migrants. We recognize the fact that the issue of migration is a powerful driver of sustainable development for migrants and also their communities. And during these recurrent national disasters that are happening across the entire country, the diaspora community in Somalia has pulled its weight, especially in terms of mobilizing resources and providing life-saving assistance to the country, to women and girls especially. And for this reason, I want to posit that the Somali diaspora needs all the necessary what we call like institutional capacity that will be required to become an even more significant development force back home in Somalia. And that said, we must also remember the importance of Somalis who remain here in Somalia and do not have the opportunity to go abroad. These are the ones who fight also for the country. So strengthening the skills of the youth through investments and through innovations and through development of human capital could be prioritized as a vital aspect of the deeper connections within the diaspora. Within the UN, we have what we call, there's a project which is called the Migration for Development in Africa. It's a project that is championed by our colleague agencies, the IOM. It brings diaspora professionals together. Each year, they come together to boost knowledge and skills transfer. And this is an excellent example of the needed connections that we need to put in place so that even private sector individuals and projects can be joined to them to create conditions for migrants and for diasporas to fully contribute to sustainable development. I want to end by saying this, that within the country, within the ambience of government, within the construct of government, we have what we call the National Department of Diaspora Affairs. And they are working with government and non-government stakeholders. And together, they have demonstrated commitment towards what I would call a participatory, inclusive, and a a coherent and collaborative policy, so to say, to make this happen. And these efforts should be encouraged by international organizations, in my view, and also by the international community. It is essential to recognize that the commitment to a deeper diaspora connection in Somalia ties also into the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, which the United Nations system champions. And you recognize that migration is a powerful driver for sustainable development, and it also brings significant benefits to their countries of origin. So in sum, and in conclusion, I just want to posit that bringing the power of the diaspora is very, very important. It is what we can, it is the catalyst to future development in Africa. The Somali example has shown us that, and it is something that we need to actually go out of our way to deliberately replicate across African countries. On this Africa Day, I want to congratulate every African and to say that let us harness the power and what we have within the diaspora community to ensure that we can take Africa back to where it belongs, which is the rightful place of economic prosperity and development. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Lee. Thank you for that powerful presentation. And I do agree with you. We can never underestimate the power of the diaspora and the contributions of the diaspora. Thank you so much. We truly appreciate you coming to us all the way from Somalia. It's not easy, but you did it. So we appreciate your dedication and your service.
And it's 11 p.m. here right now.
Oh my goodness. Go to bed. It's time for bed.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much. At this time, we're going to move on to our next speaker. Our next speaker is Camille Olufowobi. Camille is a connectologist and global affairs expert who created a global platform that recognizes high achievers of African descent worldwide. And many of you know this platform is called MyPad. MyPad honorees are decision makers in over 80 countries worldwide, selected based on political clout, business acumen, social media following, and humanitarian endeavors to lead the advancement for people of African descent worldwide. Camille is a true embodiment of thinking globally and acting locally. He's lived, schooled, worked, or visited 30 plus countries on 5 continents. He generally considers himself a global citizen with a passion for Africa. Today, Camille is going to be talking on bridges to the diaspora and or intra-African trade. Camille, thank you so much for joining us. The floor is yours.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. Naya, thank you. This is Camille Olufowobi, and happy Africa Day to all of you. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're dialing in from. I'm dialing from Kigali, Rwanda, celebrating Africa Day in Africa. Truly an honor to be here. I want to begin first by just saying thank you to Debo Folarunshaw and the SAID team at SAID Institute. God bless you. Thank you for the amazing work and the consistency. I must begin there. I've known you for many, many years, and you've never wavered in your love and belief in the possibilities of Africa and Africans. In my time with you tonight, it's about 10 p.m. here. I'm just going to share from my heart what today means to me. And I must tell you, more than ever before, a new generation of Africans have taken Africa Day to new levels that we haven't seen in probably a generation. It is more global today, the awareness of Africa Day. And the reason why is because in my lifetime, I haven't seen this level of connection and a level of appreciation of Africa by a new generation who now sees what's possible. They see that the old deal is not working, and we are all out to change that. And for me, that gives me hope, renewed hope, that Africa in our lifetime will achieve the possibilities and attain that potential our predecessors have strived for. Let me talk to you quickly about what we do at MyPad, and one of my core passions with this work. It is to connect the diaspora. And when I use the word diaspora, I'm talking about the global African diaspora. Because of time, I'm just going to rush through this. Questions I'll ask, I'll give the answers. They're rhetorical questions. The first is, where do the largest number of Black people of African descent, live in the world? Many people would say it's the United States of America, and that's not true. The United States is number 3 on that list. The number 1 on that list is Brazil. Brazil has over 100 million people that look like you and I, of African descent. And how did they get to Brazil? During slavery, the Portuguese were the first and the last to start slavery. They did it the longest, and it is the shortest distance from Africa to the Americas. So millions of Africans were exported to the Portuguese colonies in Brazil, which now today accounts for the largest population of people of African descent outside of Africa. The next, for the purpose of time, I'll rush through it, is in India and Pakistan. Many people never get that one right. During the conquest of Africa, of North Africa, the Arabs, the Ottoman Empire had a lot of people from East Africa who were taken as well to the East. So the Europeans took us to the West, to the Americas and the Caribbean, while on this side, on the East side, we were taken to India and Pakistan, then America, then countries like Colombia with over 11 million people of African descent. And just last week in Kenya, we at MyPad supported the vice president of Colombia, who's a Black woman. You can look it up. Another quick point for you. There are 3 Black women who are vice presidents in the diaspora. Again, I'll give it to you because of time. Costa Rica was the first Black woman of African descent to be the vice president in her country, Kamala Harris. And recently, Her Excellency Francier Mina, Marcus Mina, she was part of our My Roots in Africa launch we did in Kenya. And we created the platform of My Roots in Africa to meaningfully connect the diaspora Black to Africa. So they visit Africa and they plant a tree so that when they go back home, they can say, I literally have roots in Africa. For me, this has been the best part of this journey, truly connecting a diaspora that left the continent on boats, who were enslaved, are coming back to the continent as free men and women. For me, this is a life calling, and I am super excited to continue on this journey, to partner with institutes like yourself to do this work that we do, all together for the glory of Africa and its diaspora. So again, my name is Camille, and I'm privileged to be the founder and CEO of MyPad, which is the most influential people of African descent. And we run a climate action program called My Roots in Africa, which is our mission to connect people of African descent back meaningfully to the continent in support of climate action, and to create unique connections between a people and a continent. Naya, if you permit me, you just give me one more minute, I'm going to share my screen and just show you a slide, which is a reflection of the work that we have done, here at MyPad, right? Let me just pull that up. Can you see my screen if I do share? So this picture you see is a picture of where Black History Month is all over the world. I grew up in the US, and Black History Month was always in February, right? Which is the shortest month of the year. But when we started MyPad and we launched My Roots in Africa, we discovered that Black History Month is somewhere every month around the world. So 12 months in a year, Black history has actually been celebrated from a global point of view. The moral of this story, and what I want you to leave this conversation with, is that when you begin to take a global worldview on the systemic oppression against people of African descent, you start to see that we have a greater chance of overcoming the oppression because we are stronger than the opposition. We are spread all over the world, sometimes in unexpected places. And it is okay for us to be dispersed. But what is not okay is for us to be disconnected. So where MyPad steps in is to create this connection between our people all over the world, working together for the glory of Africa. That is my time. Thank you so much for the platform, Deborah. Much love to you. And Naya, thank you so much.
All right, we are back on. We do apologize. Technology can never be trusted. But we are so excited to be back on. Thank you all for your patience with us. It doesn't matter how you begin or what happens in the middle. What matters is how you end. And we do have more powerful presentations to close out for today. So at this time, I want to invite our next speaker. Our next speaker is Steve Harris. Steve Harris, fondly called Mr. Ruthless Execution, is privileged to be a trusted authority in the field of life and business strategy. He's a highly sought after management consultant, business accelerator, and author, and is the chief executive officer of Education. He's also regarded as one of Africa's leading business coaches. His podcast, The Ugly Truth About Business, has been rated among the top 5 in the entrepreneurship category in Africa on Apple Podcasts and has been downloaded over 600,000 times. His online courses have been taken by over 5,000 people, and his weekly emails reach over 31,000 subscribers. Today, Steve is going to be talking about the Africa we want as well. Steve, thank you so much for being patient with us. Thank you for understanding. The floor is yours.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Nia, for the very kind introduction. Thank you, Debo, and the SED Institute for this opportunity. So I'm going to be talking about the Africa we want. And to understand the Africa we want, we must first remember the Africa that we were. We must also understand the Africa we have. And more importantly, together, we must create the Africa that we want. Now, the Africa we were built pyramids that are today regarded as engineering marvels. The Africa we were was the source of the world's knowledge. Having, the world's library first at Alexandria, Egypt, that at the height of its powers had between 40,000 to 400,000 scrolls, but was unfortunately destroyed in 48 BC. The Africa we were was known as the bread and food basket of the world. The Africa that we were was known as the incubator of mathematics, science, and astrology that caused ancient thought leaders such as Pythagoras, who learned mathematics, Hippocrates, who studied medicine, Plato, who learned metaphysics, and Socrates, who learned philosophy, to come from all around the world to visit and learn at the feet of Egyptian African scholars. In fact, even the Lord Jesus Christ migrated to and lived in Egypt when he was a young boy. That's how powerful Africa is. Now today, the Africa we have is unfortunately often known for having strong men and building weak systems and institutions. The Africa we have walks around with a begging bowl looking for aid because it seems to have lost its ability to feed not just itself, but the world. The Africa we have is often tolerated by other nations of the earth and is also uncelebrated by its African American children, who, like many orphans, have unfortunately experienced misery and in many cases have no connection or memories to their great history, nor do they want anything to do with their African parents that abandoned them and never searched for them. Going to the Africa that we want. The Africa that we want is a world superpower that epitomizes the leadership philosophy and principles of African leaders such as Nelson Mandela, Kwame Nkrumah, Thomas Sankara, and Nnamdi Azikiwe. The Africa we want is not divided by tribal affiliations, arguing about, just like Debola said, who has the better jollof rice or who has the best music, but rather it's an Africa that epitomizes the values of Ubuntu, which means that I am because you are. The Africa we want is one that doesn't only promote its vast numbers as its strength, but also has true economic and political strength in its vast numbers. We want an Africa where we take our rightful place as superheroes among the world's Avengers, but are proud, honorable, and distinct, just like the Black Panther was. The Africa we want is not only an African Union. The Africa we want is a united Africa. Thank you very much for your time. Are you with me, Nia?
I am. Steve, thank you so much. Thank you so much. I am with you. We're still here. We're going to power through this. We're going to make it. We're going to make it.
We're going all the way.
All the way, home run, baby. So, I love everything you just talked about. And what stood out to me was your first statement. To become the Africa we want, we have to remember the Africa we were. Very, very powerful. Steve, thank you so much again for speaking to us.
Okay.
And appreciate you for staying, the length of time. We truly, truly appreciate it.
It's worth it. Thank you.
All right. We're going to go on to our next speaker. So unfortunately, our next speaker cannot be with us, live. However, she does have a video for us, a very short video for us. So our speaker is Ms. Setembele Ntombela. She is the acting CEO of Brand South Africa. She has been part of the Brand South Africa team for over a decade, a prolific marketer with over 22 years of marketing experience in private and the public sector. And she has a deep understanding of the marketing and brand environment. So now we're going to play the video before we listen to our last speaker for today.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Today marks the 60th anniversary since the founding of the Organization of African Unity. What a time to be alive. My address this afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, is anchored on the AfCFTA and its potential and possibilities. We've heard the story before. We are the second largest continent in the world. We are a young continent. Africa is rich in culture and is diverse. What good is that if that does not translate to the economic growth? It saddens me that when one looks at the numbers, the African continent only contributes 3% of the world GDP, and they contribute about 2.6% of the world trade. Surely we can do better. The question I'm challenging this afternoon is, what will we do? What will we do to make it happen, and how do we fix it? And let's start by understanding first and foremost that Africa is a brand. Similarly, as we have seen other European brands, it's time that we come together, you and me. We believe in Africa and create united brands of Africa. So where do we start? I've been asked many times. It is simple. We use the same techniques and methodologies that we have used in promoting our country brands. We have to identify what we stand for. So I'm talking to the issues of identity. Who is Africa and what does Africa stand for? We have to articulate the values that we have to subscribe to and ensure that we live by these values. And number two, we have to understand our competitive advantages. When we understand that, we will then be able, or rather be in a better position to collaborate and create new magic and new products together. But if I don't know what is good in Kenya or what is good in Nigeria, I will never know of the opportunities. So the time is now that AfCFTA is propelling us to think outside of the box and start to come together to build the solutions for the Africa and the rest of the world. The African-made solutions. Ladies and gentlemen, the last thing that we need to do is to shift the narrative. So you ask, how do we shift the narrative? Yes, let's move away from Africa is rich in minerals. It's a land of possibilities. It's land of that oozes with.
We do apologize for the technical difficulty, but we want to thank our speaker, Setembele, for just speaking to us so powerfully again. And so now we have saved the best for last. Can we have our next speaker come up? Can we have a side-by-side screen with me and the next speaker? Because I want to do justice to this powerful man, okay? What else can I say about you, Jimmy? Jimmy of all Jimmys.
Hi, Leah. How are you?
Jimmy, I want to thank you so much for staying until the end. Truly, you saved the best for last. And I'm going to read your bio just a little bit, but it doesn't do justice to the amazing work you do across Africa. And to provide more context, when I posted a flyer across my WhatsApp, which is a very personal space, people were like, how are you and Jimmy on the same flyer? How is that even possible? Do you know who he is in Nigeria and across the world? So I just got to put that out there. But let me read your bio so people can understand even more. All right. So Jimmy Tewe is recognized as one of the 100 most influential young Africans. Jimmy has empowered several hundreds of thousands of Africans in more than 30 countries of the world through his speaking events, training, coaching programs, social media channels, and live seminars. For almost 2 decades, thousands of people have enjoyed his authentic, humorous, and insightful teachings on performance enhancement using behavioral science techniques, which has led to the emergence of several thriving businesses and recognizable acceleration for working professionals. Another funny thing about Jimmy that y'all don't know is Jimmy has this interesting obsession with Range Rovers. I don't know what it is, but I've seen it on social media. Jimmy, I'm going to stop here so I stop cracking too much jokes. I can see you're happy and excited.
All right.
And close us out powerfully.
All right. Thank you very much, Nia. And thank you. And let me just say, I mean, my assignment, you said you saved the best for last, because the best would actually be a summary of what everybody has contributed today. That's what makes it best. I'm just a contributor. All right. Thank you so much for this opportunity. And to everyone watching today, well, happy Africa Day. My name is Jimmy. I'm based out of Dallas, Texas, Frisco, actually. And I've just sat down here, listened to every single speaker, all the way from Debola to our last speaker. And I can only just say, see how much value there is to give. Now, when I realized I was going to be the last speaker, I just began to think about it, that it would be good. I'll make a few assumptions about what we will speak about and basically provide a summary of the way forward, all right? So I'm meant to speak about bridging the gap, bridges to the diaspora, because up until 2 years ago, I was just a Nigerian in Nigeria, but now I'm a Nigerian in diaspora, and it's been a different experience. Now, the truth about it is this, that there is an urgent need to facilitate 3 things: connection, communication, and relationships between the African diaspora community and their home countries in a way that fosters development and the emergence of a power, African power, to reckon with. Now, to be able to do that, and like I'm saying, a lot of what I'm going to be saying is summarizing all that has been said today. There are 3 key things that need to be done. Number 1, we need leverage. Number 2, we need to facilitate engagement. Number 3, we need to create opportunities. Leverage, because there is skill, there are resources, and we need to leverage that, facilitating engagement in terms of cultural gaps, historic gaps, geographical gaps. In terms of creating opportunity, we're talking about collaboration, exchange, and growth. So Africa has a large global diaspora community, no doubt about that. But it is important to deepen ties with this community in a strategic way so that we're able to tap into the vast resources, the enterprise or expertise and opportunities within this diaspora community that we're talking about. So we're talking about a huge potential, a powerful force that can be leveraged for mutual benefits, because this community has a significant demography of African descendants that can contribute to Africa's development in various fields. Now, there are very many benefits to making this happen. Number 1, obviously, is the economic contribution that can come from it. The World Bank remittances to sub-Saharan Africa in 2022 was estimated to be about $52 billion. And what we find out in most cases, remittances exceed FDI, foreign direct investments. And so with this increased remittances, for example, this can be channeled into entrepreneurship, investment, and development. Number 2, investment potential. A report by the International Organization for Migration estimates that African migrants and their descendants hold over $1.3 trillion in purchasing power globally. So therefore, encouraging investment from the diaspora in Africa can create job opportunities, faster innovation, and of course, stimulate growth. The third benefit will be education and expertise. In fact, we know that there's something trending right now about an African in diaspora, in the UK, about, migration. But the truth about it is that a lot of Nigerians, I'm a Nigerian, for example, out of Africa, move on the premise of education. And many of these African diaspora have gained valuable skills, knowledge, qualifications, and met amazing people that are sitting at senior executive levels across America, for example. But there's an urgent need to leverage this expertise in a way that contributes capacity building, knowledge transfer, and human capacity development in Africa, all right? And so we're able to collaborate, African professionals and academics collaborate with institutions in Africa. We're able to mentor young talent. We're able to participate in research and developing initiatives. The fourth area will be technology and innovation. The truth about it is that go and check any of the major organizations globally, you will find Africans there at the edge of cutting-edge technology. So engaging with the African diaspora can facilitate the transfer of technological advancements, best practices, and innovation ecosystems in Africa. Don't get tired of me yet. What about cultural diplomacy? Africa's rich cultural heritage is a powerful tool for fostering connections with the diaspora community, all right? The popularity, for example, of African music, fashion, and film worldwide showcases our potential for cultural exchange to shape perception and enhance economic opportunities. I'll talk about tourism and heritage. Africa's diverse landscapes, historical sites, Steve spoke about the pyramids in Egypt, and vibrant cultures can attract members of the diaspora to reconnect with their ancestral roots. And by promoting tourism and heritage-related initiatives, Africa can facilitate diaspora engagement, boost, obviously, local economies, and preserve our cultural heritage for future generations. I wouldn't overlook political influence. The truth about it is that it's begun to happen. African diaspora are wielding significant political influence in various countries, including the US where I'm based, the United Kingdom, Canada, France. And what can happen is that by strengthening ties with diaspora communities, it can lead to increased advocacy for Africa's interests in each of these nations, including areas of trade, development, aid, and representation on international platforms. Lastly, a huge opportunity for networking and collaboration. Africa diaspora's vast networks and connections can be harnessed for collaboration in various sectors such as academia, business, healthcare, and governance. Engaging the diaspora in forums, conferences, professional networks fosters partnerships, knowledge sharing, and cross-cultural dialogue. That's why I like the work that Camille is doing in terms of, the MyPad, amazing work that is going on there. So Jimmy, if we're saying all of this, what is the way forward? Now, let me say it up front that a lot of effort obviously has been made to deepen the ties and relationship or build a bridge between Africa and its diaspora community. However, there's still more grounds to be covered. I'll just share 7 quick things that I think that we need to engage in. Number 1 is to engage in diaspora outreach programs. African governments and organizations can initiate outreach programs to engage African diaspora community to tap into their skills, their knowledge, and resources for the continent's development. This could include cultural exchanges, networking events, investment fora, and educational incentives or initiatives. We could also, number 2, create platforms for collaboration. Establishing platforms that facilitate collaboration between Africa and African communities would be highly beneficial, and such platforms will be forums, social networks that can provide spaces for discussion, knowledge sharing, and partnerships. Today we have Facebook, we have Instagram and all that, but the truth about it is that there are niche social media platforms that can actually be created around the African story that can connect us in a deeper way. These platforms will help to promote entrepreneurship, investment, and trade opportunities. It will also foster economic growth and development. Third point is that we need to provide incentives. Africa needs to provide incentives for diaspora engagement. Governments, let's talk about government, because that seems to be the bane of Africa, can actually offer incentives and create favorable conditions for diaspora engagement, including tax incentives for investments, streamlined processes for business registration. The ease of doing business is one of the metrics in terms of how advanced a nation is. That can improve, simplify procedures for acquiring citizenship or dual citizenship. I believe a time will come that the way that people are migrating to other nations to become citizens, people will one day become citizens of Africa because of the opportunities that are there. Removing bureaucratic barriers, and it will just enable diasporans to contribute to the continent's growth. What about skills transfer and knowledge exchange? I believe very sincerely that we can have programs, mentorship programs, capacity building workshops, educational exchanges. By leveraging the expertise of the diaspora, Africa can strengthen its human capital and promote innovation across various industries. Philanthropy and social investment. Many members, the truth about that, many members of the African diaspora are involved in philanthropic activities and social investment. When I meet people here, they tell me, oh, I'm supporting a school here, I am supporting some children here. But what about if African governments and organizations can collaborate with diaspora members to support development projects in a way that is targeted, in a way that is effective, in areas including healthcare, education, infrastructure development? By leveraging the resources and the networks of the diaspora, Africa can address social challenges more effectively. Cultural exchange and heritage preservation. Africa can foster a sense of cultural identity and belonging among the diaspora by promoting a whole lot more cultural exchange programs. Today we have people trying to trace their roots and people claiming to be Nigerian, Ghanaian, Rwandan, and all those kind of things. Yes, we can be a lot more intentional. Create festivals, art exhibitions, music concerts, literary events that celebrate African heritage. How much noise was made about the African Day really in Africa today? So by preserving and promoting African culture, Africa can strengthen the emotional bond with the diaspora and encourage their active involvement in the continent's affairs. Last and not the least, there's no way we talk about Africa without talking about the leadership of Africa. And to be able to do that as a diaspora, and I mean, this last election in Nigeria, where I'm from, I felt a bit cut off. What about facilitating, possibly voting and political engagement, where African countries explore ways to enable members of the diaspora to participate in political processes? Now, I know the truth is that they might not want that, but as we begin to progress as a continent, these things should be in place. Voting in national elections, running for office, because the truth about that, the exposure that the diaspora have can actually have a lot of impact for people locally in Africa. Providing avenues for diasporans to engage politically can create a stronger sense of connection and encourage their active participation in shaping Africa's future. I'm going to conclude by saying that by actively engaging with the global diaspora community, fostering deeper connections, Africa truly can harness the diaspora's resources, expertise, and networks for mutual benefits. Every person I meet, well, the kind of people that I meet, always tell me that my heart is at home, even though I am here. And I'm saying that these collaborations have the potential to drive economic growth, promote social development, and lastly, strengthens Africa's position in the global arena. One more time, I would say happy Africa's Day, and I wish everyone the very best.
Jimmy, thank you so much. You know, what I love about what you did is you said you were going to do and you did it. Bring everything together we've heard today. We truly appreciate you. What I love even the most about your presentation, your keynote, is you provided solutions, right? And I think that is what's key. We need to be more solution-based and not just conversational-based. So thank you so much, Jimmy. We genuinely appreciate you. Thank you for taking the time to help us today.
Thank you.
All right, this officially ends our panel lineup. Unfortunately, we do not have time to take questions and respond to questions, but we do want to appreciate everyone who has joined us today, everyone watching, everyone here as said, and of course to the panelists. Thank you all so much for dedicating your time, coming here today. Like I said earlier, your service will never go unnoticed. People who logged on from Somalia, from South Africa, from different parts of the US, from was it Kenya, just so many different parts. It really just shows that as the diaspora, we are strong and all of us want the same outcome. We want the same solution for the continent of Africa. So thank you all so much. And like Jimmy said, happy Africa Day. Now, before we officially close out, we do have continuous events going on for the rest of the week up until the weekend. Give me a second to read out the events we have here in Houston at said institute. Tomorrow, Friday, May 26th at 7 p.m. In person, we have the Pan-African Social and Cocktail Conversations. Now, you don't want to miss that. It's going to feature high-level city officials in Houston. Amanda Edwards, who's currently running for mayor, Donnell Cooper, who's a candidate for city council here in Houston, Olamide Kayode, who is the founder of Paya and a wealth coach, Dr. Jemima John, who's the president of Houston Caribbean Professionals, Mr. Mazda Denon, Deputy Director, Special Advisor on African Affairs to the Mayor of Houston, and of course, our moderator, Festus Omoye, who is a founder and CEO at Lathering Your Success. Now, Saturday, I told you we're going to go into Saturday as well. Saturday, May 27th at 3 p.m., we're going to have in-person event called Passport to Africa, Meeting of the Minds here at said institute. It's going to feature an amazing array of speakers. First, Jokotade Adeniyi, author, speaker, thought leader. Of course, our very own Hakeem Tijani, who is the founder of Cavalry Lane Consulting. It's also going to feature Omina Daniels, who's an attorney turned author. Isong, songwriter, producer, director, small marginalized business advocate, and of course, Ukime Daniel, who is a medicine and population health innovation consultant. That was a mouthful. We have an amazing, that just shows how amazing this weekend is going to be. Non-stop partying for Africa Day as the African Union turns 60. Thank you all so much for joining us today. We genuinely appreciate you. Can my people said you guys come and say hi? Can we have the said people, everyone behind the scene? Like I said, we are live as said. Everyone behind the scene, just come say hi. Deborah is still here. We have TJ here. I don't know if this space is going to be enough for us. Just come say hi. You know, we can capture this moment for future. We've made history. We've made history today. Look at the team. Everyone who's worked so hard.
Happy Africa Day. Thank you all. Thank you for joining us wherever you are in the world. Thank you for giving us your time. And thank you for your service to all our panelists, all the speakers, and we just say Happy Africa Day and thank you.
Thank you so much.
Hey, everyone. See you tomorrow on Friday.
Yeah, see you tomorrow. Don't miss it. Thank you. Bye. Have a good day, y'all. Take care.